Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. You have joined Take Control of Your Information, Integrating and Connecting Your Disparate Data Sources from the Cloud. So what we're going to be doing today is taking a lot of data information that is typically available on the cloud in many different applications and locations, and bringing them all together and visualizing their relationships and their content in the brain, the way you think about your information. Joining me today is Patrick Thompson. Patrick will be answering the QA today in the GoToMeeting panel.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
And today is a really interesting demonstration because I talk with a lot of different people daily that use TheBrain, and TheBrain is a fantastic way to store your information online. We'll be talking about that later today as well. But so many times we get the question, do you integrate with OneDrive, Google Drive, Evernote, OneNote, Dropbox? The list goes on. And the quick and simple answer is yes, we do. And the reason why it's so valuable to bring all of those types of online data repository files that you have into your brain is, number one, so that you can easily visualize them and their relationships, but also quite often, and this happens to me in particular, I don't have a Dropbox account. I've got a sample Dropbox account that I use for some demonstrations, but day to day, I don't use Dropbox. But I can't prevent everyone else from using Dropbox. And certainly, from day to day, from time to time, I get those emails coming in with a file that I need, and my colleague or my client is sharing it from Dropbox, from OneDrive or Google Drive. So even though I don't use those accounts, I'm receiving information from those very popular online repositories that are out there. And so rather than just downloading that file that I've received and saving it on my desktop, moving into TheBrain, I simply link the file into TheBrain. And so that's what we're going to be doing quite a bit today. And we'll show you different examples of how these different applications communicate and integrate with TheBrain. So let's go ahead and get started. And really quickly, let's just bring some local content into TheBrain. So pieces of information in the brain are what we call thoughts. And of course, we can click on the thought to make that the current active thought and display all related information around it. So I'm going to click down into my clients area. I'll click over to clients, clients by service level. And I'm going down into my gold service level clients, and I've arrived here at my client, Time Warner. So I've got a couple of different projects that I'm working on with Time Warner, and this is where I'll be focusing all of my efforts today and bringing in all the different data sources and files and content that's important for my projects for this particular client. So I've got a current active project called See the World. I've clicked and I've made that the active thought. And now I'm going to start bringing some content into TheBrain. So let's just start with local content. Because it's important to point out that files can be shortcuts to local documents that you have maybe on a shared network or on your local drive, or those files can be moved internally into TheBrain, depending on what works best for you. So I've got a file directory open. Let me just open a new one. I'll leave Google Drive for the next step. So I'm going to jump onto my C drive, and we'll just drill down here in eSolutions. And here's some sample files, or some files that I am going to be using for this See the World ad campaign. Now, you can very easily drag and drop into TheBrain. That's mostly how we're going to be building this area of TheBrain today. I'm going to simply click on, let's start with a Word document. Here's my project details. I click and drag right into TheBrain. This creates a new child thought underneath the current active thought. And by default, it has a shortcut back to that original document. So that's the default when you install TheBrain, is to create shortcuts to your original documents. Now, have no worries. You can always go in and change the defaults. So in TheBrain, I can click on Options, and go down into preferences. If you're on a Mac today, you would click on TheBrain and then get to preferences. And on the UI tab, you can specify how you want TheBrain to behave for drag and drop files. So whether you're linking to those files or moving those files into TheBrain, that's simply your choice. And it really depends on your environment. If you're on a network and you've got access to your X drive, and the X drive has files from everyone in your department, and you're collaborating and sharing files there, obviously moving those files internally into your brain would not benefit your colleagues. So a shortcut would work best. For me, I'm on the road quite a bit. I'm not always even connected to the internet. I might be at a client's office with my laptop, and I need access to my files, to contracts, invoices, and documents, installation paperwork, etc. So I like to have internal attachments in my brain. So we've got many different choices, and it really depends on what works best for your environment. I'm going to leave the defaults on, so we'll just link to files, but I'll share a few more tricks with you. So for local documents, I can drag and drop to create the shortcut. I can also hold down the Control key. Now you would do the Alt key on a Mac, but I am on a PC today, so I'm going to grab, now I'll grab this company background PowerPoint, hold down the Control key, and I'll drag and drop into TheBrain. And let's take a look at the difference. Notice, company background, it does not have the little black arrow icon that you see on this Word document. That's telling me that's an internal attachment. I've actually copied that file internally into my Brain database. When you copy or move a file into TheBrain, you're not compressing it or zipping it up in any way. You're not even renaming the original document. There's a files directory in your _Brain folder, just to give you a little behind the scenes here. That files directory contains all of your internal attachments. So internal attachments in the Brain are really, really great because when you sync your Brain to the cloud, you can share your Brain with other users and give other people access to your data, to your files. So I can share all the files that I put into my Brain with Patrick or with my other colleagues because they're internal attachments, and I sync my Brain to the cloud, and there's different ways to give access levels to cloud brains. We'll talk about that a little bit later today. One last component when moving local files into the Brain, here I'll grab the summer order, and I'm going to click on Control-Shift. The same on PC and Mac, a Control-Shift, and keep an eye on that summer order Excel spreadsheet, and notice that it disappeared from the original location. Control-Shift will move the file internally into your Brain. So we've got a few different keystroke options, and you can always go in and change the defaults in the application. So the application behaves the same way for you, whether you do a keystroke, drag and drop, or not. Also, with these files that we've now moved into the Brain, notice I can right-click on an internal attachment and select Move File Out of Brain. So I can very easily move a file back out of the Brain or right-click on a shortcut and select to move file into Brain. So I can always go back and modify how a file is attached to a Brain. If you've just started using the Brain and maybe you didn't want to commit quite yet to moving all of your data internally into the Brain, and so you're creating shortcuts, that's fine. Once you get comfortable with the software and you realize, hey, this is a great, reliable way to sync to the cloud for easy backups and sharing my data with other colleagues, you can go back and right-click on, again, these external or the links to files and select to either move or copy those files into the Brain. Now, additionally, and there I just launched that file in its native application. So anytime you click on an attachment, it's going to launch that attachment in its native application. So PowerPoint's open in PowerPoint, my .doc file's open in Word, all of my web content, and I'll moving on to that next, that's all going to launch in its native application. So an HTML page or a web page is always going to open for me in Google Chrome because that's my default browser. Even if I drag and drop from another browser type, Firefox or IE, I do have those all installed on my machine, but launching them from the Brain, I'm just sending a signal to my operating system saying, hey, open this HTML page, My default browser is Google Chrome, so that's how they're going to open. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to go ahead and I have a couple of sample web pages here. And first, let's just start with a basic web page. This is a web page that's all about a coffee shop, but I really like the fun things that they're doing with fonts. I want to share this web page with my clients. Can we have some of this kind of fun levity with the web pages we create for this project? So I want to share this web page in the future, and I'm not going to remember this URL. It's a pretty obscure URL, so I'll forget what it is. I want the brain to remember that for me. So simply click and drag from the address bar directly into the brain. Now, you can do this with any, and it was just telling me I've actually already drag and dropped that web page elsewhere into my brain, but I created a new link that takes me directly to this web page, and clicking on the attachment, the icon is actually really dark so you can't see it, but as you can see, it launches the web page in my native browser. So that is opening for me in Google Chrome. So dragging and dropping web pages into the brain is sort of a key component in what we're talking about today, because a lot of these web pages or these web locations such as OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox, etc., all the individual files that you put into them have unique URLs. And if you have access to a unique URL, you can easily bring that into the brain. So I'm going to share a few more examples with you before I get to the file repositories. Let's start with Facebook. Facebook, obviously, a lot of people are putting information into Facebook and Twitter these days. And once again, pretty much every Facebook account, definitely every Facebook account, has its own unique URL. So I've gone directly to the news feed for a river monitoring site that I'm interested in. And again, I want to share this with my ad campaign for Time Warner. So we're really talking about thinking green with our products in the future, and let's talk about what we can do for the environment. This is an interesting website that talks about, keeping rivers, keeping our waters clean. And we're going to try and tie that in for a nice, green effect for our products, for our client. So once again, I simply click on the URL and bring that directly right into the brain. Now, notice it just named it Facebook. And the reason why it only named it Facebook is because that's what the name of the tab is. It's important to point out, you can always go back and rename what a thought is named. The brain is going to do its best to name the thought for you when you drag and drop, whether it's a file or a web page or a document or an email, whatever you're dragging and dropping into the brain tries to find out what the name is for you. So in this case, Facebook is just saying, hey, I'm named Facebook. That's not accurate enough. So I'm going to rename this River Keeper. Keeping water clean. So I can have a nice long title. Why am I linking to this obscure Riverkeeper Facebook page from Wisconsin? Well, the reason is I just really want to tie in. I like how they're presenting their information, and I want to do the same for this ad campaign that we're working on for our client. So I'm actually going to take some of this information. I'll copy this part. Rather than having this nice, real long thought name, I'll paste this in the label. And notice that when I mouse over the thought, we are keeping water clean. I can go back and rename and edit that at any time. So that's what shows up when I hover over that specific thought. Let's go a little bit deeper with this. So now we're dragging and dropping different types of web pages into the brain. I'm now going to jump over into Twitter. Now we've got some really great integration with Twitter, but the first thing that I want to share with you, and here you can see is just sort of a random Twitter account, and I came across Flo from Progressive. Fun Twitter feed with still providing information about their products. Intriguing. It's bringing a lot of people in, a lot of followers. Hey, we want to emulate this. We want this type of Twitter feed for our products. So I'm going to share this as an example of what we're aiming towards. And I'll go ahead and just click on Flow from Progressive. And notice that my URL went from twitter.com to twitter.com/itsflow, a unique URL. So I can drag and drop this right into the brain. Or I can even click on an individual tweet. So let's go down and see what Flo has to say. Here's some type of unicorn frappuccino. I'm sure that has some great things to do with their products. But once again, all I'm trying to point out is the URL has once again changed. So I've got a unique URL. I can drag and drop this into the brain as well. So I can either go to the web page for just the online Twitter feed for Progressive Insurance, or go directly to an individual tweet. And that is what will launch and load up in my browser. Now, additionally, I mentioned earlier that we've got a couple of interesting and unique integrations with Twitter. I can also create a new thought, Think Green. So this is sort of the subject matter that I'm on, Think Green. I actually want to do a Twitter search on Think Green. So I click on options up above, Twitter search. So for this thought, I can say a hashtag Think Green, or I want to search all of Twitter for Think Green. I can preview. So is this sort of what I'm looking for when I think of Think Green? I can do a quick search. I haven't typed in anything yet. Think Green. Let's preview that. There we go. So I'm actually previewing Think Green on Twitter. So a lot of information there on Think Green. What if we actually make that a hashtag? Let's preview that. And this is really what I'm after. A lot of great information about thinking green. I want to keep an eye on this from time to time. So this is what I want to attach to my thought in the brain. So let's go ahead and create that Think Green hashtag. So that takes me anytime I revisit this thought to review what's going on Twitter with the hashtag Think Green. So a few different Twitter integrations or things that you can do with Twitter in the brain. Let's now start talking about all of those different file repositories. So I mentioned earlier, it's an ongoing list. It's still growing, whether you're using Evernote, OneNote, OneDrive, etc. There are so many different ways to share and store your files online. And really the common thread with these online file sharing or storing services is they all have really great unique URLs. And typically most of them I've found refer to the share link. That's a very commonly used phrase, share link. So even if we don't cover the file online cloud storage service that you're using today, that's something you can look for. Does my online storage have share links for my files? I'm sure they do. I'm sure you'll be able to find it, and that's how you'll be able to bring that content into the brain. So let's go ahead and start with OneDrive. Now, I had my OneDrive folder open earlier. Oh, I had Google Drive open. So I'm going to open my OneDrive folder. I'll get to Google Drive next, because Google Drive has actually some more advanced features that work nicely in the brain. But here's OneDrive. So this is the local version of OneDrive that I have. Everything that I put into my documents directory in OneDrive is going to be accessible to me online. That's how it works. So I've got my local files, and I can continue dropping files here. People can, or I can, log in from another computer and move something up to my OneDrive online. And once again, when the sync takes place, I'll have access to the file here. Now, with these local files that I am syncing with OneDrive, they behave the same as the files that we looked at earlier. So I can website budget. I can drag and drop that right into the brain. I'm not linking to my online version. I'm linking to my local version. So website budget, now I've got a shortcut, and I can click on that particular attachment. It opens up in Excel, and there's my website budget. But let's say I want the online version. I'm doing a lot of online work with this file. Maybe I'm sharing this file with other users. They're making changes, and the online version is the most accurate or dependable, or the version that I'm most interested in. So in my browser, I've also navigated to my OneDrive account. There it is. And there's my website budget. So I'm going to delete this thought, or just forget this thought. Right click and select forget. to remove that thought from my see the world area in my brain. And now I can either launch this file. So that's one option for me. Launch. Notice I've got the nice, unique URL. I can drag and drop that right into the brain. So that's one way to integrate with OneNote. So there I've got my, which document did I bring in? My website budget. And notice here again, it really doesn't have a great name. It takes the brain found the name from the tab up above. So obviously it named it Microsoft OneDrive. We can go in and rename this to website budget. So easy enough, and we can launch directly from the brain at any time in the future. This takes us to our online version. Now you can also, as I mentioned earlier, grab the share link. If you're in a hurry and you don't want to open the document, here's the other version that I had open. You're in a rush, you don't want to open the document. I'm just going to right click right here in the OneDrive interface. And when you select share, there's the same URL. So I can quickly copy that onto my clipboard, right click in the brain. Now it's going to recognize once again that it's a Microsoft OneDrive. It changes the icon a little. That's very interesting, but that's fine. We can go back and name this budget file to, or whatever we want to name that file to. So unfortunately with OneDrive, it doesn't give us very clean, interesting names when we're dragging and dropping or copying the share link from the OneDrive interface online. But different applications behave a little differently, and I think we'll have some better results with Google Drive. So let's go ahead and take a look at Google Drive. Once again, I believe I don't have Google Drive open quite yet. So let's first open my local Google Drive location. So once again, it works the same way. Now, you don't have to have a local copy of Google Drive. In other words, I can just use Google Drive just from the web page. Just log in to Google Drive online and upload files manually, create files from Google Drive without having anything ever local. Also, you might not use Google Drive, but someone sends you a Google Drive link. So you can bring that into the brain for easy access directly to that specific file. I do happen to have a Google Drive local copy of everything that goes into my Google Drive. Here's my local directory. And this is the unique option that you have with Google Drive, is that even from the local copy, now once again, I can drag and drop a Word document directly into the brain, no problem. I can right click, copy and paste. I can also, let's find, and here's a pricing chart that I want. I can also right click on my local version of Google Drive and find my Google Drive share link. So I go to Google Drive and select share, and there it is, get shareable link. That's what we're looking for. So I just want to click, and I've got that URL copied onto my clipboard. And back in the brain, we can go ahead and close that. On my See the World, I'll right click, and notice it says paste web link because I didn't copy the actual file itself. I copied the web link, and there's my pricing chart. So this is the item that I just copied, this pricing chart Excel spreadsheet. I can click. It's not going to take me to the local copy. As you can see, it takes me right here into my pricing chart online. So I got the Google Drive link, the share link, copied and pasted that right into the brain. Now, once again, from Google Drive online, let's go ahead and open that. We can close. And I think I have Google Drive. There it is. So here's my Google Docs. So once again, I've got local access to these in my local drive. If I'm not running that local drive version and I only interface with Google Docs online, or someone sends me a link, I can right click on any of these to open the file itself. And oops, let's not do that. We don't need to edit it now. Let's go ahead and open it, view only. and we're looking for that share. There it is right at the top. So we can drag and drop that URL, or whenever you find that share link, get shareable link, copying that onto the clipboard, and we're pasting into TheBrain. Oops, I pasted it in as a search, right click, paste web link, there we go. So I've got my pricing chart and my project outline now moved from Google Drive with a nice, easy link into TheBrain. And the reason why it's so valuable to bring this into TheBrain, not only do I have these different resources, so I've got links to Google Drive, links to OneNote, but I can take this a step further. Google Drive has no way of showing me that this particular file is something that I'm working on with Patrick. So I can type in Patrick. I don't have a thought for him yet, so I'll create Patrick, connect him to my team. So he is part of the team site too. And I, once again, can start building into my brain all the different relationships and information about this specific document and visualizing that information right here in TheBrain. So we've brought a couple of different types of online data repository files into TheBrain. OneNote, Google Drive, those are typically, I would say, lean towards Windows users. But I know a lot of you Mac users out there love to use Dropbox. And Patrick is on a Mac and favors the Mac over Windows, I believe, and therefore has a great example of a Dropbox account bringing those items into TheBrain. So Patrick, I will make you the presenter now.
All right, great. And yes, I do have a great example just real quick. So here I have my Time Warner folder. I'm working on my Time Warner project in my brain, and this is my Time Warner folder on Dropbox. So I can easily just go into a proposal, for example, and I can right click on this and copy that Dropbox link and then paste this into my brain. And now I have that document in my brain, and I can just click on it. That'll open the web version of that. If I want the local version of it that I have on my machine, I can actually just drag and drop this link into TheBrain, and that'll be a link to the local copy in my Dropbox folder. As you can see from the directory right here, it's displaying that that's on my local machine. But this Dropbox link goes to the online version, and I can also do the same directly from Dropbox. So here's my Dropbox on the web. I can find a file that I want to share or add into my brain and click that share link, create the link if it's not already public, and then copy that link, and then also just paste that into my brain. And that's the same, that goes directly to the online version of that file. And then real quick, I wanted to, Sherwin asked a question about linking to network attached storage. So that's also possible. I have this here, for example. This is a network attached location that we use here for files that we share between everyone in the office. So as long as you have that mounted to your machine, it's pretty easy. You can actually just drag and drop those files into TheBrain as well. And you'll have a link to those, and you'll see that's a volume documents that I have on that network attached storage.
Great, yes, and that's also just dependent upon, if you are currently logged in to the box. So if Patrick syncs his brain to his home computer, for example, where he might not be logged in or VPN'd in yet, the path will still be there. The thought is there, the path is there, and clicking on that attachment, your computer is going to try and access that location. So if you're not currently logged in, you simply won't be able to open the file, but that doesn't affect TheBrain at all. Next time you are logged in, you open that attachment, you'll get right to the file that you've created a shortcut to.
Right.
Great. Well, thanks, Patrick. I will take presenter back. And the question also came up with regards to access to Google accounts, having multiple Google accounts and giving access to your brain if they suddenly then have access, other colleagues have access to your Google account. And there's no easy way to demonstrate this, but we can explain that, anytime you're linking to a file, the brain sends out a message to your operating system that says, hey, launch this file. Now, Patrick and I, Patrick is logged in through his browser to his Dropbox account. I'm logged in to my Google Drive, to my OneDrive. If I was not logged in from my browser and I click to launch this attachment, the very first thing I would be presented with is the login screen. So I would need to log in order to access this account. If I share this entire brain, let's say I share this brain with Patrick, but Patrick doesn't have access to all of my Google accounts, my Google Drive, my OneDrive, etc. He might come to a thought and say, oh, here's the project outline. Let's go ahead and launch this. If I have not shared that file with Patrick, it's going to launch in his browser. His browser does not have the cookie. He has not logged into my Google Drive account, so he would not have access to that file. The file, once again, it's still there on the thought. The path will be preserved, but unless you know the password, because I haven't shared the file yet, you would not be able to access that particular document. So that's important to point out, and that also means that yes, you can have more than one, and many people do have several Google Drive accounts or OneDrive accounts or Dropbox accounts, work-related accounts, personal-related accounts, etc. So if you've got those cookies on your or in your browser, everything's going to open just fine. It's up to you as far as how you want to protect your Google Drive, etc., and what you want to link into the brain. So let's go ahead now, and I'd like to share one more. I saw a couple of questions about Evernote come up. And so let me go ahead and launch Evernote. Evernote is very, very much the same as what we've seen today with a couple of subtle differences. First off, with Evernote, you can see when I right-click, I get the option to share, and I can copy the share URL. There it is. So I am in the desktop application of Evernote. I've copied the share URL onto my clipboard, and I can go into my brain. And this is another item that is specifically referencing our See the World ad campaign. So I'll paste web link, and there it is, the Cedar Rapids on-site visit, and that is some information that is being stored in Evernote. Once again, I click, and it takes me to that particular document or that particular item in Evernote. Once again, I am already logged into Evernote, so it just launched it right in my browser. Now, we get this question a lot, which is, can it launch in the Evernote application, desktop application? That is actually something that Evernote has changed. Those are typically referred, and you can do some web research on this. If you're a fan of Evernote and you're starting to integrate your Evernote content into the brain, but you want it to launch in the desktop application, not online, that's called the classic share link. I think that's what they call it, the classic link. For a while, they allowed you to hold down the control key and right click. And instead of getting copy share URL, you'd get copy, what did I call it? The custom or the classic. That's what they called it. Classic share URL. They've taken that away. So that's something that Evernote has changed. I'm not sure what the reason is, but the only thing you can copy from the desktop application is the online URL. Now, there are ways that you can take that URL, that online URL that you've copied, and convert it into the classic URL that does open in the application. But there's no easy way to do that from the application that I have found, and I've done some online research looking for this. You can manually change it by going in and changing www.evernote.com, blah, 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 to Evernote with 3 forward slashes, computer name, et cetera, et cetera. So some customizations you can manually do to get those links, but unfortunately, Evernote has taken that quick little shortcut out. I'm not sure why. So that's not something that we control. That's something that Evernote controls, something just to be aware of. But once again, very, very easy to get those online URLs out of the desktop application, and from the online application, again, drag and drop, copy the URL, right click, look for that share URL link, and easily get that content right into your brain. So now that we've covered bringing in all of these different application types, whether it's local files that we're linking to, local files that we're copying or moving into the brain. We can bring in all different types of web content and all of these URLs for documents that are shared through OneNote, Evernote, Dropbox, etc., bringing those all into the brain. Again, the advantages are that we can bring information together from disparate information sources. So here, right under one thought, I've got links to my Google Drive items, Evernote items, web pages that I'm interested in, local files, as well as OneNote. I also have Dropbox running here. So let me just bring in a Dropbox example really quickly. So let's grab this materials research. Let me make sure I'm in Dropbox. Yes, materials research. Dropbox also gives you the option of right-clicking from the desktop application to grab that share URL. So I'll copy the link and right in the brain, paste that in as well. Great. So I've got Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, Evernote, etc., all in one location. I can link this to other people and documents that I'm working on that I've access to right here from my brain. But the other most important thing is that I can share this with my colleagues or access this information online. So I'm going to sync this to the cloud. And this syncs to www.webbrain.com. And you can log into your brain online. Let me go ahead and open my browser up one more time. So here I am on the Brain website at www.thebrain.com. I'm going to log into my personal account. And here I'll have cloud access to my brain. And once again, all of my online content. So here's that eSolutions Brain that I have open. And I can go down into my clients and clients by service level, gold service level clients, Time Warner, and once again, start accessing all of my information from the cloud. So right here from the web, I have access to my brain, or I've got desktop access to my brain. Now, it hasn't finished syncing yet. I've got a lot of information still syncing into the cloud right now. So as soon as that's ready, then we can get to some of the same content and thoughts that we edited today right here from the web interface. But while that is syncing, I'll show you that we can continue on in the cloud, adding new thoughts. So we'll say customer review, customer early year review. So I can create new thoughts right here in the brain. I can edit the content, add notes, add file attachments, again, from the web interface. And, let's go ahead and save that. And additionally, from the web interface, I can access my information from my iPhone as well. So let me bring up my camera so I can see what I'm doing here. And so I'm going to log into the brain. There we are. So I'm logging into the Brain application. And these are all of the online, and there you can see right at the top is my eSolutions Brain. So these are all the brains that I have access to online. And once again, I can click down into clients, service level, my gold service level clients. There's Time Warner. And let's go ahead and open. So here's See the World. The thought that we added it's a little hard to do for me by clicking behind. There we go. So notice there is all of that great content available to me from my iPhone. I don't have to take my laptop or my computer to my next meeting. I can just take my phone, and when someone wants me to pull up that materials research, something that I had available only in Dropbox, I can click and launch that attachment. A little hard to do from behind. There we go. So now I'm launching Dropbox. I've got the Dropbox app right on my phone, and there it is, open in app. So I can launch that attachment. I still need to log in. So I can launch those attachments directly from my mobile devices as well. So it's a really, really great way to take all of that content with you on the road and have access to it from one location. If you've got multiple Dropbox accounts, if you've got maybe multiple of these different file types or data resource locations, OneDrive, Google Drive, etc. This brings them all together. So regardless of where it's coming from, it's all in reference to See the World, the ad campaign, and I can access it from one location. Whether it's on my phone, my laptop, or wherever I'm logging into TheBrain, I can still get to all of that important data. And I mentioned sharing it with others too. So when you're looking at TheBrain, we've got many different options available for you, whether it's you're just going to be using the free version of TheBrain, if you're going to upgrade to TheBrain Pro license or a Pro combo so you can start syncing to the cloud. You can also upgrade to TeamBrain. TeamBrain allows multiple people to collaborate and access the same brain. So with this eSolutions brain, let me go back to my account page. So these are all the different brains that I have got synced up to the cloud. And here's this eSolutions brain. I'm actually going to go into the settings for this brain and notice that I'm sharing this brain with Patrick as an editor. So Patrick can also collaborate with me in this brain and access anything that I've linked to. So specific Dropbox files, specific Evernote files. If I've shared those publicly, he can go to that thought and launch those attachments, and even add his own into the brain. So now we're collaborating in the same brain and sharing information across platform. Patrick was Mac, I'm PC. We can both still utilize the same brain through the web interface or download local copies. So again, exponential number of wonderful new features and enhancements that we can do with all those files from their disparate information sources. And with that, I think that's everything that I wanted to cover today. And I'd like to now go and see if we have any questions that have come up, Patrick, in the question panel.
Yes, we did have a couple of questions. Andy would like to know if you can cover linking to individual Gmail messages.
Oh, absolutely. So I mentioned briefly email integration as well, and Gmail is fantastic. I use Gmail. Gmail is a really great email service to integrate specifically with TheBrain because every individual email you receive has its own unique URL. So I'll open up my Gmail account. I don't see it open there now, so let's go ahead and do that. And so let's say this particular Gmail, sort of a goofy looking email that I've opened up, but let's say I really like the layout. It's got a fun picture with a little bit of information down below about each of these different corporate events. This is how we want to, maybe share our news for our campaign. So this is a great example. Let's bring it into TheBrain so I can share it with my colleagues. Look at that nice, unique URL. That's always what you're looking for, is the unique URL that you can simply drag and drop right into TheBrain. So there's my Gmail. Once again, not a very clear, definitive name, but I'm not worried about the name of this email. I'm not actually trying to sell my customer on this Isthmus newspaper that comes out that's all about, modern music or whatever. I just want to say Gmail with great event examples. So I'll just clarify in the message. And let's also share this. Sometimes I'm not after the whole email, or maybe I'll delete that email in the future. So I just want to copy a little bit of the content. Let's grab some of this, copy, and into the notes, paste. So you've got the picture up above, and TheBrain does its best to sort of represent that content. You can see it's a little squished there, but I've got all the information I need. The graphic up above with the nice clean layout of this comedian down below, etc. So quite often I'll just copy and paste whatever it is in the email directly into TheBrain. You can drag and drop from Outlook as well. And once again, any online email service where the emails have unique URLs. Not all of them do. Some of them don't. Some of them, if you go to Hotmail, I think every email you go to, the URL stays hotmail.com. So look for unique URLs, and many options then become available for you for getting that content into the brain.
Right, and also just real quick, I wanted to point out that that unique URL in Gmail only shows up if you don't have a vertical or horizontal split set up. So there's an option in Gmail where you can view your emails vertically or horizontally next to each other, and you won't get that unique URL if you're using that option.
That's right. That's right. Okay.
Great.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Let me see if we have any other questions here. I think that was the main question that we had. Can you copy and paste email with a Mac? So I'm not sure if you're referring to Apple Mail, yeah. So maybe you can cover that real quick.
Sure. You can certainly copy and paste there as well. As you can see, like this graphic is a little smushed, but the brain is always going to do its best when you copy content off the web and paste into the notes section. The brain will do its best to represent that. But content can be created in many different ways. Sometimes there's JavaScript or some type of video coding involved that doesn't show up properly in the notes section. So you can link to the file or the data, or try copying and pasting into the notes section. Simple graphics should work just fine when you're pasting into the notes area. There's also some further integration we have with Apple Mail. When you're doing a search, the brain utilizes your Spotlight search capability. So search is a little bit different on a Mac because you'll see the thought matches at the top, content matches down below, and below that will be your Spotlight matches. We've got some great videos on the website if you want to check those out. You can go to thebrain.com/tutorials, and there's some Mac search capabilities and features for you there as well.
Great. We had a few more questions come in. Kirk actually brought up an important question. What happens with sync collisions? For example, if you're linking to content on a desktop and while you're syncing, you add something to the same thought.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of different things to discuss there. First off, let's say you're linking to a file that you have in Dropbox. So you copy and paste that into the brain. It's only pasting in a path. So if that file is updated, Dropbox, whatever the most recent version is, or that version on Dropbox, let's say it gets edited, but it's still there on Dropbox, the file name stays the same, your path stays the same. You always have the latest version, the version that Dropbox represents. That's what you have a link to. Now, with regards to dragging and dropping into the brain, files changing, etc., when you drag and drop into the brain, it really depends on if you have a shortcut to the file and the file gets updated. Again, you're just copying a path to the file. If you are actually moving a file into the brain, it's the version that you copy. Let's say you click on something and drag it into the brain, and you've got your settings, or you're holding down the control key. So you are bringing a copy of that file into the brain. Well, someone edits and makes a change. You then do not have that most recent change because you brought in a copy from that specific moment in time. So it's really up to you to decide if you want a shortcut to an existing file, so it's always pointing to whatever version that is, or if you want to move something or copy that file into the brain. Again, typically I move files into the brain. They're internal in the brain, and that's the version that I use moving forward. Let's say I am sharing this brain with Patrick. There are some different capabilities with Team Brain for how we manage changes. So the brain, every time you sync, is going to get the most recent version. If Patrick changes a particular file on his desktop and syncs it up to the cloud, later that day I sync, it's going to overwrite my existing version with the cloud version because that's been modified most recently. So the online version that is up to date has the more recent timestamp. So that version is downloaded onto my local version of the brain. I hope that makes sense. And if you're interested in Team Brain, just write into us at support@thebrain.com. We can give you many more details on online security and synchronization process and the rules of synchronization. Basically, everyone with TheBrain, you can set up so that it is auto syncing. The brain is syncing in the background. So you don't even have to think about, oh, did I sync those changes that I did last night? The brain synced those for you. So everyone has the most recent version. That's auto sync, and that's a feature of TheBrain that we always encourage people to turn on and leave on. So a lot of other capabilities with TheBrain. Again, just let us know at support@thebrain.com. We'd be happy to hear from you, and we can provide you with further details.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because Carlos actually had that exact question about working with files together.
Great.
And then real quick, Chris had wanted to know if you could maybe demo dragging and dropping mail from Outlook.
Absolutely. I have a sample Outlook account. And so I'll drag and drop something in. It's really interesting because we've got some we've got basically a unique integration with Outlook. When you drag and drop from Outlook into the brain, it creates a new thought with the link back to that Outlook message. If you'd like the brain to archive your Outlook message, you can hold down the Control key and drag and drop into the brain. And finally, anything from Outlook, when you drag and drop it into the brain, it's actually going to give you an HTML rendering of that content in the notes section. So in the future, you don't have to launch Outlook, but again, dragging and dropping into the brain from Outlook creates a new thought with a link to that email message and also an HTML rendering of that content down in the notes section. So here I just did a drag and drop of this, turn your car into a bunk bed. And again, the graphics aren't showing up yet down below, but there you can see hopefully you can see I've got all of the text content. The graphics will show up there in your notes section. There's, again, some great tutorials about Outlook. If you want to know more, check it out on our website at thebrain.com/tutorials. We've got Outlook integration videos for you to watch there. And with that, I think that answers all of the questions that we had come in today. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for today's session. If you have further questions, you can contact Patrick and I at support@thebrain.com. We'd love to hear from you and answer any additional questions that you may have. And until we meet again, enjoy your week and enjoy using the brain. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.